Here we are in Blackboard, and we want to put in all of our Zoom stuff, and we want to set it up in a certain area. So the first thing we're going to do is go up to this little button here. We're going to click, and we're going to go down to Tool Link, and we're going to type in Zoom Meeting. And under Type, we're going to go right down to the bottom and go to Zoom Meeting, and we're going to say Available to Users and Submit. Now it's going to throw it down at the bottom. Now what we're going to do is we're going to slide it up. We're just going to grab this and we're going to slide it up, and we're going to create an area in here for it to work on. So we're just going to add a divider, and then we're going to slide that divider up here. So we're going to put all the things we need for Zoom here. Now this is going to be a quick launch where we can go to our Zoom meeting, but what we want to do is we want to have two other areas here for Zoom. One is to actually set up all of our configurations, and the other one is to place to store Zoom recordings. So what we want to do at this point is we're going to open up another window here. We're going to type in zoom.senecacollege.ca and hit enter. And what this is this is going to allow us to sign in and configure our account. Now to make this a lot easier, what we're going to do is we're just going to grab this, we're going to copy it, and we're going to go back to here, and we're now going to put in a web link. And our web link is going to be Zoom setup, and URL we're just going to copy into here, and we're not going to make it available to users because this is for us. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down here, we're going to grab that and bring it up into our area here. The last thing that we're going to do is we want to set up a content area here, and what we're going to do is call it Zoom Recordings, and we're going to make that available to users because that's where we're going to be putting our Zoom recordings that we're going to be doing in our class. Now, as I mentioned before, Zoom Meeting is where we're going to launch our Zoom meetings once we have our configuration setup done, because all of our Zoom meetings are going to run exactly the same way. So it's important that we get the setup right, or at least have our best idea of how to set it up when we first begin. So let's just click on Setup, and it's going to take us again to this page. We're going to sign in. Now there's a number of different versions of Zoom out there, and you'll be able to tell just by going up to the right corner and clicking here that this is your licensed version from Seneca College. The most important part of the Seneca one is if we hover over here, is you can host meetings with unlimited minutes for up to 300 different participants. And if you have another version of Zoom, it's definitely not going to allow you to do this. Now the settings, there's a number of settings that you probably want to understand, and the best way is to actually work with this a little bit, read over how you want your meetings to go, try it out and see if it works for you, and later you can come back in here and change it if it's not working for you in class. There is one major thing that I would strongly suggest you do, is at least at the start, is not to have a waiting room. And the reason for this is because every time somebody comes in late to your class, you're going to hear a doorbell sound, and you have to interrupt what you're doing and click to let them in, which can be very distracting, especially when you're first learning how to use Zoom. So I would leave the waiting room here off. Now one of the things that you're going to find, and this is locked in by administration, is that everybody that comes in is going to require a passcode. And we'll take a look at that when we actually show you a sample Zoom meeting as we run it. In Meeting Basics, you can go here and try out these things and read through these and figure out the best possible solution for you and how you work with things. And there's also an In-Meeting Advanced section here where you can set up things according to how you want them to work. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is to try and set things up the best you can, and if it's not exactly what you want, you can always go in here and change it, and once you change it and get it perfect, it's going to be perfect from then on. As you change these little toggles here, it's going to say your settings have been updated. You click here again, it's been updated. So as soon as you've done the updating of what you want, you can just get out of this and get back here to actually launch your Zoom meeting based on the current setup that you've got. Let's take a look at setting up a Zoom meeting. So we're just going to click here, and it's going to go to this Launch LTI link, which is going to provide extra security. And we say launch, and right away it should take us right into Zoom at Seneca. Now if it doesn't, then you're going to have to allow pop-ups in your web browser to get you to here, otherwise you're not going to have this extra security. Now what we want to do is at this point schedule a meeting, and notice here that it's got a topic here, and this topic it picked up from the actual course that you've got here. So whatever course it's already got in here, and maybe we can put in weekly theory, maybe that's what this is. And we can click here, and let's just set up well in advance. Let's just say it's going to happen on Tuesday at 8:55 in the morning. So if we want, we can go down here, and as close as we can get is 8:30, and again we're going to have to change this to AM. Now it's as you can see here, it's just to the nearest half hour, so that's kind of okay because you can sort of set up your meeting a little bit ahead of time, and it doesn't have to run until you tell it it's going to run. And it could be 2 periods. Let's set this up for 2 hours and maybe 15 minutes just to be on the safe side. And we can also say that this is a recurring meeting, and maybe it's once a week, and it's on Tuesdays, and it's going to end by maybe in October on this Tuesday here. Some of the things that you didn't set up or have set up in the actual setup section of Zoom, you said registration was not required, so you can actually, for this particular meeting, if you want, you can change that just by clicking on this and unclick it, so you can change the default settings you want as you're creating the room. It said again we didn't have a choice on passcode. The students are going to have to enter a passcode, but waiting room, you can always enable that before you go in or not. Authenticated users joining room or not. So all of these kinds of things you can change. One of the things that I had set up here was that the host and participant video should be shut off as you come in, because one of the things you're going to find, especially if large class, like I usually have 70 to 90 students in a theory class, with all that video running, it's going to really choke the system and it could cause it to crash. So that's not a good thing. So it's better to have this shut off. Now, this video that's talking about is not the recording. This is video of you in front of your webcam. Now, enable join before host, we set that it's not going to be the case because you don't want students coming into the class before you do. And you probably want to mute participants upon entry. And you typically don't want to record the meeting automatically because you may be doing some setup, and as soon as you start the meeting, it's going to start recording. Now at this point, we can just save that and we're ready to go. One of the things that you might want to do before you get into the meeting is to actually create a poll. And what you can do is you can click here to download a template. Now I'm going to bring it up in Numbers because I'm on a Mac, but you can bring it up in Excel. But even if you do it on Numbers or Excel, you have to save this thing as a CSV. And this is the format that you've got it in here. Now, polling 1 means that there's 2 questions. Polling 2, that's a separate poll with 2 questions. And this is the type of question, single, whatever here. So multiple choice, single, true, false kind of thing here. And so if you were to take out polling here, then you'd have 4 questions in this poll. So this is actually the length of each poll, and you can put them all into one file. Now I'm going to be loading up some stuff just to show you how this works, and this is a good thing to do before you get into the actual meeting. So I'm going to import a CSV, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to my work drive, and I'm going to bring this one in here, and we can take a look at it. And right now, if I open this up, I've got a question here, how many microcontrollers do you have? Because this is a microcontroller course. And my second poll is going to be, have you ever programmed this? So these are the 2 things that I can bring in as I'm coming in here before I actually start my class. Now, creating these templates when you're running a class, not an easy thing to do. So it's better if you have this done before you start. Now let's start the meeting and see how things are going to look. Now at this point, it's going to say choose an application, which should be zoom.us. And if you haven't downloaded the application, you should download the application. Otherwise, it's going to not be there. So we're just going to click on this and it's going to take us in. So here we are in Zoom. Even though we've started our meeting, we haven't really started it with our students, because until we invite our students to join the meeting hasn't really started. That's why we're talking about things like recording. We don't want to start the recording until the students get here, and it gives us an option to make sure everything is set up before we actually start our meeting. Let's first of all take a look at polls. Here's micro numbers that we had, and so we've got next, and we have micro numbers. So we've already got this, and we've checked that out. That's all fine. We can also take a look at recording just to get comfortable with this, and we want to record to the cloud, not to your computer, and we'll see why this is the case later. And we want to also take a look at sharing, and we can share Whiteboard. Double click here. We have the ability to actually draw on this board and put up meeting notices and so on, like we did before when we were using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So we can put in text, and it's a little different this time because right now we can change the format here to be any size that we want, say up to 48 to make it a big title here. We can change our color to be anything we want, say green, and we can even grab this and move. What we couldn't do before is actually move this around now in here, and let's just type whatever course code you happen to have, and so we have that ability to make up something, and we can even go here later and save this and bring it up again in here as part of our presentation. So we have a lot of things we can do in here once we've started our meeting, but we haven't invited our students in yet. When we go to share screen, We can share desktop, and when we share desktop, it can have any of this stuff here that we had originally on Blackboard. Now at any point we might want to get rid of this, so let's go down here and go to hide floating meeting controls. Notice this, press escape to show them again, because this makes it a little bit easier for us to sort of work around and then show students things like, talk about video lectures or whatever we want to talk about. One of the things we can do is we can then just say stop share, and it drops us back to this screen. So the next step is to bring students into your class once you're prepared, and we can click on this little green check mark up here, and we can go down here to copy link, and it's been copied to our clipboard. We can go back to Blackboard Collaborate here, go to Grade Center, Full Grade Center, and actually email this link to everybody in the class. When you send the email to all your students, besides having the link and the passcode in the email, you may wish to put a reminder such as this one right at the start, because when students first connect up to Zoom, they're going to be given the option of no audio or Wi-Fi. Now if they have no mic, then it makes sense that they have no audio, and that's what they should select. However, if they do have a mic, they should actually select Wi-Fi, and this is something that you should put in on that very first class to make sure that they understand what's going on. What I'm going to tell you to do next may seem a little strange, but right after you send the emails to your students, what you should do is end the meeting. Until you start the meeting again, students will not be able to enter, and that's because you've set it up that students cannot enter until you do. Now you've got everything set up, they've got their email, and they'll be able to get to the meeting, but they won't be able to enter the meeting until you click here to start the meeting. You might want to have another 10 or 15 minutes to finish your copy before your 8:55 class, and the other thing is you may have back-to-back classes where you might want to set stuff up and have the room ready to go, but not allow the students in until you're ready to actually start the meeting. When students receive their email, what they should do is copy this and then click on the link, and then they're going to say allow, and all they have to do now is paste the passcode in and say join. At this point it's going to say waiting for the host to start this meeting, which means until you start it they're stuck, which is great because, as I said, it'll give you an extra few minutes to drink that coffee, or if you're between different classes, it gives you time to end one class and start the next. Before you begin your lesson, you should have as many assets loaded onto your screen as you want to share, and this will make things so much easier, whether PowerPoint or whatever. Now what I've created here was, this is a whiteboard that I've done. I've saved it. Now when you do a save, it typically goes into your documents directory under a Zoom subdirectory. And so the objectives for today, even though it doesn't matter what the course is called here, but I'm going to go over with you today some Zoom etiquette, some features, show you how polls work, show you how to access session recordings so you can actually save them here. So these are some of the things we're going to do, something very, very simple. So let's go to a Zoom meeting here, and we're going to hit the launch LTI, and you're going to see here all of the different sessions that we've set up as recurring. Now we're going to go to the first one here because it's the first week. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the passcode here, because this passcode and the link are going to be identical for all of your recurring sessions. What does this mean? This means that every week your students will know exactly how to queue up and get ready for your class, and as soon as you start the meeting, then they'll be able to come in and they'll be queued up and ready to go, which makes things a lot easier. Now there's a poll that we're going to be using for today, so we're just going to start this. We're going to go to Zoom. Now what we want to do is go up here to view and show participants and show chat, and we're going to see our participants coming in as the system realizes that I've actually started the meeting. So eventually we're going to see David's iPad in here coming up. So when it does come up, it's going to have no speaker up here. Notice there's no speaker, because right now on the iPad screen it's saying to hear others, please join audio. And the two choices that we mentioned in the email were no audio and Wi-Fi. Now if there is no microphone on the iPad, then you would say no audio, and you will never have a speaker showing up here where the student can ever speak in the class. But I happen to have one, so I'm just going to choose Wi-Fi, and notice right away the actual microphone shows up, which I can ask to unmute and get the person to talk, or I can mute them, whatever, but they do have access to these tools as we go through. Before continuing, some of the things you should find in Meeting Basic under your setup, you should have this thing set up that meeting polls quizzes are turned on. Otherwise, we won't be able to use your quizzes. Also, in the cloud recording settings, should have set up here is to auto delete recordings after a certain number of days, have that shut off. Otherwise, when it gets close to that time, it's going to keep emailing, and this way you can have those recordings for as much time as you want. One of the really neat things that I'm going to show you first, live transcript, and say enable. Now you can say things like, hi there, how are you? All of these things that I'm saying now are going to be part of what we can record, as we'll see later, and there's a whole bunch of other things you can do with this, but for now I'm going to shut off live transcript and disable. Now for polls, what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that we bring this up here, and nothing's going to show up on anybody's screen until I actually hit the launch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch this, and it's going to show up on everybody's screen. Now I just have the one person, the iPad. I'm going to say 0, and it says that, and when I end the poll, I can share the results, and all the people in the class get an idea of how many people fell into which category. Now I'm going to say stop sharing, and right now nobody's seeing this again, but at this point I will talk to the students and say, look, every credit card you have has a microcontroller. Every smart device you have, including your cell phone, your computer, all these have microcontrollers. Your car has about 20 to 30 microcontrollers in it, and so let's do this thing again. So what we can do is we can relaunch the poll, and when we relaunch this time, I think everybody's going to choose this option here and say submit, because everybody's going to assume that, we got 20 microcontrollers or more, at least this, and then we can end the poll, and we've learned something that, yeah, you have a whole bunch of microcontrollers. You can also go down here and you can do the next part, and then you can launch this, and they can answer all these kinds of questions here, which is fun, and you can just get out of this and you're back to doing your normal stuff. Now, as far as dealing with people that are an issue, up here we have under more, we have put in waiting room. Now we have set up that there is no waiting room, but if somebody is misbehaving, we can just go boop and bye-bye. Now on their screen it says the host will let you in soon. So you can have a private chat with these people and say, hey, here's what you're doing, when you have a break, and then you can go back here and admit. If you actually go up here and you remove, chances are they won't be able to get in with that ID again. Now let's take a look at record. So right now it's recording, and all the stuff that it's recording, it's going to email me at the end of the meeting and tell me exactly where to go to get a link to this, because it's in the cloud. And we can then say stop recording, because we just want to record a little bit of stuff. We can say stop recording like this. Sometime after you've ended your meeting, you're going to get an email like this. What you want to do is right mouse click and copy this link. Now if you go to Zoom recordings, you can go to build content, you can go down here to web link, and you can say video for lesson 1, and then you can paste in here the video link that you copied and say submit. Any student can click on it, and there's your video.